The Manitowish Waters Historical Society is pleased to present Dan Gavronski, My 2 Years at Statehouse Lake, filmed on June 16, 2022. We hope you enjoy this narrative of an early 1970s camper at the Youth Conservation Corp.
Hi, can you just introduce yourself and tell us the years you were at Statehouse Lake?
Yeah, sure. My name's Dan Gavronski, and I was there the summers of 1970 and 71.
Okay, what was your capacity? Camper, counselor, retread?
I was a camper, obviously, my first year, and then retread my second.
Okay. When you were here as a camper and a retread, were there any special projects that you worked on?
There were quite a few projects. I mean, we did Copper Falls. I was, one of the things that's really satisfying to me is Firefly campsite on Firefly Lake. I was part of the first group, and it was a busload of kids, and the DNR was there. They had all the trees marked out, and we had, I don't know, 20, 30 kids with axes and brush saws and all that sort of thing. And they basically said, hey, have at her. And it was the funniest thing you'd see, because it was a bunch of kids just going right off the highway and starting whacking down trees. And it was a hoot. And, every time I drive by, I feel real good about it.
I bet that is satisfying.
It is satisfying, and a lot of good memories. We'd go down by the lake for lunch and catch crayfish and boil them up, and things like that, and made a lot of good friends at that time. And I think that was one of the first work sites they put you in, because it really showed your work ethic and how well you got along with people. And I think Mr. Brismaster, was pretty keen on that. He gave kids a pretty well-rounded experience of the different work projects that they had, to give you different experiences.
Very good. Can you tell us a little bit how things worked at Copper Falls?
I only went there once, but everybody, of course, liked that, because you're out dealing with other humans, other than just campers. And of course, when you're 16, 17-year-old, that was important for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
And but a lot of it was cleanup. Some of it was projects. Obviously, it was a long bus ride, so that was kind of good for some people. I think my most favorite projects were the stream improvement.
Okay.
We went on Deerskin River, did a lot of work on undercut banks, and had the water jet, the construction materials, timbers, and that sort of thing. So that was, for me, I'm a trout fisherman, so I really enjoyed that. Yep.
And so you worked with DNR fishery experts or rangers. Tell us how that worked.
Well, we would, every morning we'd get together, and occasionally some of them would come here to camp and connect with the crews, but most of the time we'd go to Trout Lake Station. And that was always kind of a fun thing, just to hang around those guys in normally 10, 15 minutes in the morning. I think the neatest thing, or not the neatest, but one of the neatest things, was the vehicle that they had. They called it the covered wagon, and it was just an old stake truck, and it had the ribs on the top. It was an old military vehicle, and they had benches on the sides, and you'd pile about, 15, 16 kids in the thing, and it was all open air, driving down, Highway K, and it was a lot of fun. And we'd be, on the way home, we'd be singing camp songs and all that stuff, and just acting stupid.
Loving the Northwoods.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So when you were here, did you have any special roles like CQ or working in the PX?
Yeah, I did kitchen duty, and that was sort of a rotation. The only thing bad about kitchen duty KP was they had to get up so early in the morning. But the good thing was you were the only campers that were allowed to take a hot shower. Otherwise, it was always in the lake, and you'd soap up and wash up in the lake. But that was good, working alongside the cooks and the cooks' helpers. I was CQ, part of my second year. That also had special privileges. You had to be up early. You actually slept in by the office. Mr. B let you run into town for errands, which was always kind of fun. They had a little Jeep that I got to drive, and I think one of the only reasons I got to be CQ was because I could drive a stick. And I also had typing class in high school that I could apply, because occasionally you had to type some things for Mr. B. So yeah, it was a good experience as well.
Any other projects that come to mind?
You know, a lot of it for us was, you know, the Firefly Lake, Copper Falls, the routine projects. One of the neater ones was Paul Brennan.
Paul Brunner,
yeah. And we would normally meet up with him at the Trout Lake station, if I recall. And one or two campers would get chosen to work with Paul for the day. And that duty was pretty cool because he had a little boat, and what you would do is you'd drive around, you'd go to these remote boat landings, and you'd tool around in his little boat, and you'd pick up and clean up the remote campsites. And that was kind of cool because you saw a whole different aspects of the Northwoods than what you would normally see, and you were pretty much one-on-one with Paul, and you know, creating a dialogue with him and just kind of understanding nature and things. So I only got to do that, I think, for 2 days of my 2 years that I was there, but that was always a real neat thing to do. Yep.
Paul Brenner is a beloved member of our community,
Right.
and he is a great historian and has since passed.
Yep.
And he kind of mentored me on logging, so I understand.
Yep.
It's a special time when you're with Paul.
Right. Yep. That was just a neat experience.
Right on. Yeah, and he was very dedicated to the DNR and work there. He's also a World War II vet.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Yeah. He shared that, but it wasn't the first thing he talked about.
Yeah.
He'd rather talk about other things than himself.
Yeah, I remember when I first moved up here in 2008, and I think Paul had a lot of pictures and postcards, and I remember reading about that in the paper. There was an article on him in the paper, and I thought, man, I know that guy. And I just, you know, kind of thought that was cool because, you know, I'll just say throughout my life, this place has always been in my heart.
Yeah.
And taught me a lot of good things: work ethic, leadership, getting along with people. You know, for most of us, it was the first time we'd ever been away from home. You know, when you're 16, 17 years old for an extended period of time. And, you know, you go on the website and listen to these guys that went into the military. I did not, but the guys in the military and how much that, you know, helped them along, if you will, on doing all that. So definitely helped me in my life and what I was doing, and very fortunate about it. It's amazing how much you think about Mr. Brismaster. Just on his leadership skills, how he dealt with a bunch of 16 and 17 years old, and how he tried to mold them into, you know, just good human beings, I guess. And you know, a lot of my work ethic, my attitudes, my leadership skills, a lot of that, you know, the seeds were planted here, and so that means a lot to me.
Excellent. So as we walk around this camp and we see Cabin Row here and Statehouse Lake, can you talk a little bit about how that has influenced you and how important it is still today?
Well, a lot of it is, you know, just fun memories. You know, Mr. Brismaster always had a project or two going on. One of the projects was the theater, and back when I was there, the theater curtain was a Army parachute.
Okay.
Spread across on a wire. One of our projects was we went and cut down some trees, and there was a small lumber mill down the street, and we took the trees and cut them into boards, and we put seats on the, you know, put bench seats on the theater seating. So it was things like that. It was running up to Lake Superior to get some stones for the sauna. those things. When you look at the diversity of the kids that were here, they were from all over inner city, rural farms, whatever. It was a real good melting pot of kids at that age. And, a lot of us, or not me, I was pretty naive at that point, but a lot of these kids were pretty in tune with the ways of the world, I'll say. And, they teach other kids a lot of things about life. I'll kind of say that. And then, as an example, some guys said, hey, we're going to make some wine. So got some jugs. They bought some yeast, sugar, Welch's grapefruit juice, whatever, mixed it all up, put it in a jug, and we went across the other side of Statehouse Lake and put it in some of the swamp area and just let it ferment in hopes that there was something there that we could take for our last day at camp. It's things like that. And
how did that turn out?
It didn't taste too good, I'll tell you that, but back then I wasn't really drinking, or I wouldn't have known the difference, but no, it wasn't too good.
So you were carried on some moonshining traditions from the Northwoods past.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a cultural experience.
Right, it was.
A little bit beyond the code of rules and discipline, but still a great story.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what sawmill that you went to?
I've always wanted to, and I've driven around to try and find it, and I don't think, it was just a gentleman that had it like in his yard. He had a little saw set up, and for some reason I'm thinking it was down off of W. And I know it was on the left-hand side of the road as you're heading north, but I tried to find a spot that looked like it over the years, but I'm not sure what happened there.
Okay, that's something for us to investigate.
Yeah.
So when you were doing things around camp, you spoke of some of the improvement. You put the boards down for the seating on the amphitheater. Were there any other activities you did that kind of helped camp along? Or
Mr. Brismaster was really into literature and reading, and he thought it important, and during the whole day, basically, he would always have music piped on the loudspeaker, and it was Bach and Beethoven and things like that. He always thought that was important, which today, some of my appreciation for it is because of that, because of it is a very relaxing thing, and he probably had some other reason on why he was doing it and how people respond to that kind of music and things, but it was a good thing. At the PX, one of the things that we did was we built the library.
Okay.
And the way it was funded was Mr. B he called them pig plaques. And not sure why they were called pig plaques, but anyway, it was a slab of wood, and you could buy it, I think, for $1 or $2, and then you'd engrave your name and the summers that you were there, the town you were from, and then he put those on the wall in the library, and that's how we funded. I don't know if it paid for the lumber mill. The wood wasn't a problem; we could get all the wood that we wanted. It was the milling and the planing of the wood and some of the other supplies. But he thought it was important to have a library. So that part there, and I know the library's in pretty rough shape. It may not even be there anymore. But that was a pretty cool project.
So libraries were important. You were industrious and self-sufficient, and created internal fundraising to meet these goals of Brismaster.
That's right. Yep. So you at a young age, you learned about that and the importance of it, and what the results can be when you get involved in that sort of thing.
Yeah, paying it forward.
Right. Yep.
So at camp, was there an overriding motto or mission that kind of resonated, that Brismaster or others used?
Well, I think it was a combination of things. It was one, let's get the work done, and let's create something here that's good for everybody, for the community. Mr. Brismaster was an educator. He was a professor at UW Oshkosh. And by the way, a little side note, my mother actually had him in college and didn't realize that, and she didn't know that until she came to visit me one day and they met. But, Mr. Brismaster, I believe, was never married. His kids, his whole, goal in life, if you will, education, working with kids, young adults. You could really sense that in him. But again, I think the overall mission was giving kids a different perspective, on what's important in life. And I think, for me anyway, that's what I got out of it. And throughout my life, I've always looked back at this in different situations in my life. Things would pop up, and it would take me back to camp, and sometimes things that I'd never remembered from camp were sparked by things in my life that happened here.
One of the proteges of Brismaster was a gentleman named Thor Sandy, who was the counselor of the retread cabin. Can you explain what a retread is and tell us a little bit about Thor?
Well, retread is those that come back for a second year, which I did. Thor was, not sure how to say it, but obviously he was like Mr. B's right-hand person at camp. When you're a second-year camper and you've got all the new kids, there's an expectation on how you handle yourself, how you behave, what you do, what you say. People are watching you. And Mr. or Thor Sandy actually helped with that, with the retreads, and Thor was also instrumental in those that came back as leaders, and most of these were college students, either in natural resources or some other environmental studies, creating that with them also.
Thor Sandy also became assistant director of the camp. Was he assistant director of the camp when you were here?
No, I don't believe so. I think that might have come later. But
okay. Anything else that you want to add?
Trying to think here. It's
we can do this again. You live on Rest Lake. I mean, your residence on Rest Lake. Did you buy that property kind of because of this, or did that just happen randomly?
Well, I'll tell you this. It's always, ever since I went to camp, it was always my dream to have a place up here. And when we were kids, my mom and dad would always rent a cottage for a week somewhere, whether it be Wapaka, Lac de Flambeau, Minocqua, wherever. And so I always had that summer lake experience in our life. And it was always a great thing. I had 3 brothers. We had a good time, and it was always my dream from a young point to have a property up here. My family and my 4 children and my wife, we'd always come up somewhere in the Northwoods for a week. Kind of carried on that tradition that my parents did. And I took a little break from working back in 2008, and was just spent the summer up here. And one of my goals was to find a little place on a lake. And we were looking at Minocqua, Eagle River, and just didn't have the right vibe. And my wife says, "Oh, Manitowish Waters, it's another 20 minutes, half-hour drive up here. That's too far." Well, we spent some time up here and realized, this has a whole different tune to it, if you will, than the other lake chains. And we found a little place right behind Dietz's gas station, a little 2-bedroom cottage, and we ended up buying that. And it's almost like it all came full circle, because I remember, that's back when the skeeters were down.
Right.
And, just down the road we go watch the skeeters, and here it is 50 years ago today, this year or last year that I was here as a camper. So I bring my kids and my grandkids here. I show them the property. I tell them what we did, what I did. They're engaged. My granddaughter is very in tune with this place here. She just turned 10. Her goal is to go into some sort of nature, environmental type studies. And I think the seed was all planted right here. She, her 9th birthday, her theme was entomology. And she'll come here and she'll just spend a couple hours, looking at stuff. So she comes next week and she stays here for 5-6 weeks during the summer with us. So that's always fun, and we'll be coming here on a regular basis.
You said you have 3 brothers. Mm-hmm. Did any of your other siblings come, and why did you come and they didn't?
No, they didn't. They had, you imagine back late 60s, early 70s, we all had our different things, and for me, I just wanted to, I got to try something else, so getting away for 6 weeks, I don't think they had, my brothers, that's something they just really didn't want to do. And I get that, and that's okay. But I was approached by a fellow named Paul Peters. And Paul Peters was a year older than I. We played football and sports together in high school. And he just came up to me one day and said, "Hey, Dan, I think you'd really like this. This is kind of cool up here." And he told me about it. I filled out the app, I got in. And he and I came up together my first year here. Him as a retread at that time, and that's really how I got hooked up on this. And the interesting thing, Paul right now, and even his wife Marcia, work for the DNR. Paul was the head fisheries manager for the Great Lakes region out of Sturgeon Bay. And
what high school did you guys come from?
St. Mary's High School in Menasha.
Thank you.
And so Paul had a long, good career with that, and then his wife Marcia, she was more into the parks. She was head rangers at parks, and a lot of time it was just they were separated in their life. He'd be in Sturgeon Bay and she was in Copper Falls or some other Potawatomi or whatever, and they made it work, and they'd get together on 2 or 3 days a week. But yeah, so Paul Peters is the real reason why I ended up coming here.